It's the rapping Professor Aaron Smith show on the go. We are here, Temple University, at the Charles Blockson Collection in the heart of Temple's campus, and today we are here for a special screening. It's called Invisible Warriors, African-American Women During World War II. It's an amazing film directed by Gregory Cooke. We'll get a chance to hear from the director, hear some feedback from some of the people who got a chance to see his advanced screening, and really just recognize that during World War II, over 600,000 African-American women were called to serve and answered that call. You often hear about Rosie the Riveter, but there were so many women in our history that played that part. Ruby Dee, Maya Angelou, these women served and served well during World War II. The movie, one more time, is called Invisible Warriors, African-American Women During World War II. The show is on the go, the Blockson Collection, Temple University, my home away from, no, this is just my home. The show's on the go, y'all.
It'll be 10 years that I started this film. And it's taken 10 years largely because I didn't have the money, and I paid for most of this out pretty much out of my own pocket when I got the money to do it. But there were two things that people said a lot in this 10-year journey, and one was, who was Rosie the Riveter? And the other one was, I didn't know there were African-American Rosies. Think of this, I'm gonna lay a number on you, and this is significant. There were 600,000 African-American Rosie the Riveters.
We have the director of the film. He's going to introduce himself and talk to you a little bit about why making this film was so important. So just talk a little bit about that after you introduce yourself to the good people, sir.
Hi, my name is Gregory Cooke. I'm the director of Invisible Warriors, African-American Women in World War II. And I kind of stumbled upon this, quite frankly. I've been fighting in various ways for African Americans in World War II. It'll be 32 years in next week. And you know, as part of the research I was doing, I was spiritually compelled to go to Belgium. And when I went into Belgium, I went to Bastogne, which was a focal point of the World War II Battle of the Bulge. 32 years ago, I went into a museum there, and for the first time, I saw African Americans in a museum from World War II.
And just can you tell us a little bit about the exhibits that you saw, a little bit of specifics and details?
Yeah, basically in the diorama, it's called the Martyson Museum in Bastogne, Belgium. There in several of the diorama, there were African American soldiers. They were all portrayed as medics, but nonetheless, I had never seen or really thought about black people in World War II before. And I started doing a ton of research, which led me to Great Britain. And it's actually, I really discovered the Rosie the Riveters in Great Britain as I was doing research, because I stumbled upon the 688 Postal Battalion, which was a battalion of black women who delivered and sorted mail throughout Europe during the war. And so as part of the research, I stumbled upon the Rosies. And I kept going backwards, and when I got here, I suddenly saw this figure. There were 600,000 African-American women who helped this country win World War II, and no one knew anything about them. My mother was one of those women, and she told me a story about she used to tell me this story. I was a kid, 4, 5, 6 years old, and she told me about how she rode on her suitcase from Norfolk, Virginia to Washington, D.C. in 1943 to get her first job.
One of the things I was curious about, when you said that figure, it's 600,000, I was just curious to know just roughly how many African-American women were even in the country at that time. What percentage of the women, just roughly, I know not exactly, but is this closer to 20%, closer to half of the women going over and serving domestically?
I would say, I don't know the exact figure, but overwhelmingly most black women were still domestics and sharecroppers despite the 600,000. Okay, so you're still talking about several million, in all likelihood, black women who were domestics and sharecroppers. And it was these 600,000 who took their journeys. They went west, they came north to places like Philadelphia, Detroit. They went west to California, Seattle to build airplanes. And so it's a large number, but they were still the minority of black women.
And you also spoke about the Philadelphia connection for some of these Rosies with the Naval Yard and other places. Can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, well, during World War II, Philadelphia was the most diverse defense center in America. So it had all these different jobs here, all these different corporations here feeding the war. So, for example, we're talking Frankfurt Arsenal. We're talking the Philadelphia Navy Yard. We're talking Quartermaster. We're talking Baldwin Locomotive Company. So Philadelphia had a very diverse industrial base during the war, and many African-American women worked in those places. I just found out three weeks ago that my aunt was a Rosie making uniforms at Quartermaster.
Now, is there a way to help support? I know you said that there's still editing to be done, and we're still trying to make sure we get the story told the best way possible. How do people watching this go online or contact you and make sure that they can support the final product?
Okay, well, I can be reached at Invisible Warriors Film, all one word, invisiblewarriorsfilm.com. And my name is Gregory Cooke, and people can reach out to me through that. Also, I'm available for screenings and public speaking. I mean, that's one of the best ways to spread the word. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. So if you see me, please take the material and spread it around. And I'd also like to say you need to ask family members, women in your family, what they did during World War II. It's very important because most of these women never talked about what they did.
I teach a class called Black Wealth here at Temple University in the Department of Africology and African American Studies. And one thing that stuck out to me was you spoke about the millions of dollars that these women were able to bring back to their communities and generate, new degrees of wealth. Can you talk a little bit about that in closing?
Yeah, understand that most black women were domestics and sharecroppers. So if you were a sharecropper, you didn't get a paycheck at all. First of all,
if you got anything, right?
If you got anything, you got a place to sleep, and you got food if you work the land, right? Domestics were maybe making $5 a day for 10 hours worth of work. Okay, so when the war comes, these women go into all these various jobs, and in some cases their salaries doubled and tripled. And so they were during the 4 years of the war, they brought in tens of millions of dollars into the black community to help their families, to help the community. And that's one of the reasons why they're so significant. They had a tremendous impact on the American labor movement. Yeah.
One more time, just give them that website to support before we close out.
Okay. InvisibleWarriorsFilm.com.
Right now we are here at the Blockson Collection, Temple University, Diane Turner, and we are going to talk about just some of the programs that we have at the Blockson Collection, why you need to visit the Blockson Collection, how you look up information about the Blockson Collection, and what's going on today at the Blockson Collection. Hello, Diane.
Hello, how are you today?
Doing well. Tell us a little bit about how this all came to be in terms of the movie, because I'm hearing that there's still some editing that needs to be done, so this is really a real advanced screening. So how did this all come together?
Well, Gregory Cooke knows Leslie Willis-Laurie, who's our archivist, and he approached her about having it here, and of course we were delighted because one of the exhibits we have up right now is celebrating 400 years, and we're highlighting African American women. So when we had the opportunity to do this, we were willing and able, so here we are.
And hopefully soon we can get the information like this in the school system, because so often the contributions of African American women are neglected or overlooked or marginalized or suppressed in some way. And I really think it takes away from the overall beauty of the American story. How do you feel about just the lack of inclusion or ways that we can really improve telling the full story about America in service?
Okay, well, one of my dear friends I was talking to earlier, right before the film, Hakeem Mahamboudi, out in Chicago, and he has a school out there, and you yourself, you're doing it. We continue to do the work. It's not like the work's not being done. Oftentimes it's not recognized, so little by little, each one teach one. And so we'll continue to do this, and then I think part of getting it in schools is to basically galvanize the community, get the parents and the students interested, and demand that they get African American history, which is American history.
Definitely. And it is really important to note that it's not just the contributions that often get suppressed and overlooked, but like you noted, a lot of times the good work that's being done around inclusion and education is often overlooked. So everybody needs to get involved in spreading the word and getting the information out so the right stories are told for the next generation. In terms of upcoming events for the Blockson collection that you'd like to share with the listening audience, WURD Show on the Go, and so they could be here next time, live and not just watch it online, where do they have to go to learn about upcoming events or what's coming up for the Blockson collection?
Okay, if you go on the Charles Library site, all our events are listed there.
Woo, a beautiful, beautiful screening, an amazing event. Again, WURD, Aaron Smith, the rapping professor, Show on the Go, Temple University, Blockson collection, Invisible Warriors, African American women during World War II. Make sure you check it out. Gregory Cooke, and there's still time to support. Now listen. So often we talk about high-profile contributors to our legacy and our struggle and our history. A lot of people are talking about Harriet Tubman right now based on new books and movies, but we need to understand that this legacy and this conquering spirit and this tenacity and this fortitude and this just undying, relentless struggle is something that millions of African American women and men have exhibited throughout history, and we want to make sure that we recognize the times that these unknown heroes, these unknown soldiers with this spirit of Harriet and others, we want to make sure they get recognized and properly, held in high regard, because too oftentimes we have young people who look at superheroes that don't even exist. They'll know Spider-Man and Batman and all these other people, but there are real live heroes in our history that need to be, heralded to a similar degree. So we want to make sure for the Harriets of tomorrow that they understand that spirit lives on and has continued to live on from the time we were over in Africa and throughout the world until today. And movies like this help to give a resurgence to that warrior spirit, even if the warriors were invisible, but no longer. Invisible Warriors, African American women during World War II, Aaron Smith, the rapping professor, WURD, Show on the Go.